Welcome to the GreenPilled.network podcast. In September, GreenPill will be hosted by the Cartographers, a high-context community of individuals and teams dedicated to advancing the Web3 grants ecosystem. They'll explore the Web3 grants ecosystem with topics ranging from novel funding mechanisms, grant councils, and governance to emerging trends like AI and direct-to-contract incentives. This series seeks to bridge theory and practice by examining real world examples and featuring discussions with those who are closest to the action. The next voice you hear will be Sov, who contributes at Gitcoin and founded the Cartographers. Sov will be hosting this entire season. And I think that it's going to be a great season because Sov brings deep experience in Web3 grants and capital allocation. I'm excited for you to hear some of the perspectives from him and his guests. Without further ado, the next voice you'll hear is Sov. Enjoy.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Greenpill podcast. I'm Sov, and I am here filling in for Kevin Iwaki as we decentralize this season and have other guest hosts come in. So I'm joined today by a couple people that I really enjoy working with. I've worked with them in various ways, and we'll talk a little bit about that. This episode is about reputation and how reputation, specifically on-chain reputation, can really help to optimize the grant resource allocation process and the possibilities. So we'll start with some intros, and we'll jump into the discussion. So first, Mahesh, I will turn it over to you to give a quick intro on who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Sal. Excited to be here. Again, my my second episode with Greenpill in the last few months. So I'm excited to be here. My name is Mahesh Murthy. I'm the founder of Karma. At Karma, we build reputation systems for on-chain communities. And we primarily focus on DAO governance of the delegates. And lately, over the last year, we have a new product called GAP, a Grantee Accountability Protocol, which is used by thousands of grantees and a number of grant programs across the ecosystem to get visibility into all the grants being given out, and also for grantees to build their reputation.
Nice, thanks. Dani, I'll turn it over to you now.
Hello, I'm Dani. I work at Blockful. I'm the product manager of Trustful, a reputation aggregator. At Blockful, we're building public goods, focusing on open source products for DAO governance. We are also official service providers for DAOs like ENS DAO and Schroeder DAO. And over the past year, my primary focus has been on-chain reputation, a journey that started with Ethereum Argentina hackathon. I won like 3 prizes there. It was very nice. And as I said, now I'm building trustful reputation aggregator for members and grants programs as well.
Nice. It's great to be here. Welcome to you both. So let's jump into it. First, I think it would be good to start with a little bit of historical context and just kind of background. When we look at grant allocation methods today, we've got traditional methods like direct grants, but really what crypto unlocks is more democratic allocation of capital. So quadratic funding, retro funding, different variants of those, and new types of methods that could even be more automated and taking human decision making out of that process. As we do that, there's challenges in grant allocation, even with more traditional methods. Things like Sybil attacks and grant farming are things that are topics that are widely discussed in the Web3 grant space today. And so I'm a big believer that on-chain reputation can help in some ways to solve these. If you can start to have better reputation systems around grantees as well as grant programs, it essentially makes the whole process much more streamlined so that programs can find the right kinds of grantees, be matched to those grantees, know the capabilities of them. And from a grantee perspective, I can find the kinds of programs that match to my needs, my skills, and the things that I'm really good at. Most programs are not allocating a majority share of the budget that they actually allocate to grant programs, which means that quite a bit of their time is wasted in kind of going through applications that maybe are malicious or maybe just not a fit for the types of grants and incentives that they're putting out there. And from an applicant perspective, I may need to submit to 10 different programs, fill out 10 different applications, have 10 different experiences, and not really know from a program side of things, is that program really dispensing the types of grants and incentives that, align to me and my skills? And, what has that looked like in the past in terms of how active they are and those types of things. And so I think these are all things that, on-chain reputation can definitely help with. So when we look at that, let's jump into on-chain reputation systems and just, kind of talk a little bit about how they work and their benefits for grant allocation. So maybe I'll start with you on that, Mahesh. I mean, I think that was probably a lot of your thinking as, Karma evolved from kind of governance and more governance dashboards to taking a look at gap and, how you start to solve that problem or that opportunity maybe of reputation. So when you think about the benefits for grant allocation through these, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts around this. I've thought about this for for many years. When it comes to grant allocation, I see it as like these three components. So you have the grant programs who are giving out they're allocating capital, and then there's these grantees and their projects, and then there is when we do it through this democratic way, for example, quadratic funding, there are other funders who go and vote with their wallet, and then there's like a QF matching, right? So there's these three components, and all three of these users or stakeholders need some kind of a reputation. So grantees need to build up their reputation so that they can attract funding. Like they build up a reputation for doing good work so they can attract funding. And then grant programs need to have good reputation, because if there is a grant program which doesn't even like respond to you, then like they don't like do a good job of processing applications on time, like, and it's really difficult to work with them. Like if they don't have a good reputation, like good quality builders don't want to work with them. So they need a reputation, like they need reputation. And then if we go into the in the quadratic funding rounds where you have to like do this Sybil detection, and there is the reputation part there of like funders, like are these legit people who are like voting, or is it Sybils, right? So there's these three components. Today gap, we are like trying to solve the grantee reputation, and also grant program to some extent. Grantee reputation is like, it was just we built it because to solve our own pain point. We as grantees were like, we're building this and then showing it to these DAOs, and then it felt like we're starting from zero when we go to every DAO, because they're like, we don't know what you have done, like how people like liking what you have built, like should we fund you, right? There is like all these questions. I'm like, all these answers are spread across different forums or in emails and everywhere. Like I'm like, we're building a public good, so can we just put it all out there? So that was the reason behind starting gap, and that's what we're really like solving or trying to solve today. That has opened up into like so many other problems, but like that the core of it, we want to solve this grantee reputation, to help them find funds to continue to work on their projects, right? And it's like, because there are so many like grant farming happening, like how do you solve for that? Like how does grant programs know who is there for like the long haul working on these projects, like, or someone just like getting a grant, working on it, moving on, right? If we put all of this on chain for everyone to see, then I think that solves the problem.
Totally. So, Dani, maybe to turn it over to you from the program side of things, right? Because I know you've been thinking a lot about that. Mahesh has been very focused on, grantee reputation. Obviously, that has some impacts on the program side of things, and with the registry, that we've been working on, with Karma and the cartographers. I think that there's a lot of possibilities there. But maybe dive in a little bit to program reputation. Some of the recent work you've done with Trustful and how you've been thinking about that problem.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I remember when I first heard about reputation, on-chain reputation, and I searched on the internet and I found like Alchemy page of like 23 or 26 reputation dApps. And I saw like Doxy, Ceramic, and Gitcoin Passport, and I was like, okay, so reputation is everything. We don't know how to define reputation, which is crazy. And then I started to study, and I was focused on aggregate reputation to members. And then I found a cartographer syndicate, and I remember some saying, okay, but now we're going to aggregate reputation to grants program. And I was like, okay, now that's a different perspective. And I dive deep into this topic with the team, the trustful team, and we were like, okay, what would define a good reputation to grants program? And then I remembered many times I have applied to grants program and answering like thousands of questions, and then I didn't receive any mail, for example, saying that, oh, congratulations, I have applied. Not even that. I was like, okay, this is really hard, because this kind of grants program can disincentivize good builders in this ecosystem. And we thought about many reputation badges to aggregate to grants program, like smooth application and easy to integrate. For example, does this chain or protocol has like a good documentation, SDKs, and we thought about 7 badges, very cool, smooth application, grants reviewer, fair rounds. I think this is very, very important also because I saw like many grants program and the same applicants again and again asking for money, but what are you going to do right now? You're not ready around their grants program, so it's a match. You're building public goods, so Optimism wants public goods builder, so let's go build together. I think this is very, very important to match great builders and great grants program. And that's what I envision for the future. And it's very nice to see this new perspective of reputation for grants program also.
Totally. Yeah. When I think about the challenges to adoption of something like this, I think that there are some grant programs out there, some of the larger ones that have their ethos is very much transparency on chain first, right? But there are other grant programs out there that are intentionally opaque. Right. And I think that a lot of that is because there's a scarcity of the type of, really qualified talent, and these different programs and ultimately the ecosystems that they support are all looking to differentiate themselves. Right. In a world where we see this proliferation of, L2 networks and chains and, overlap and all of these different projects kind of building what might seem like similar or very close to the same things, how are you going to differentiate yourself? And so when you look at grant programs, I think that there could be some fear, right, or hesitation, maybe is a better word, at opting in, to these systems of reputation and making ourselves accountable to them, because maybe some of that data that could be provided could be used by other competitive grant programs, right? I also think that there's more and more of a push or an interest by larger ecosystem players around this concept of convertible grants or, equity stakes, right, in projects that they fund. And so in that, there's also probably some hesitation to share, certain information on certain grantees because there could be bigger picture plans around how that ecosystem might work with those grantees, and they may have equity stakes, at some point later on, right? So in that, when I look at kind of like the adoption barriers, I think it's changing some of the perceptions around those things and really being able to outweigh the value, right, in terms of like what can be provided to these programs through opting in and participating in these different types of systems versus not, right? So when we look at kind of those challenges in implementation, I mean, those are really what I see as like the adoption barriers. And I know that I've talked with both of you at length about that. Maybe walk me through the technical hurdles a little bit, right? So maybe, Dani, starting with you, as you've started to build out kind of this program reputation, system with Trustful and start to layer that onto the grants registry, what are, if any, some of the technical hurdles that the team and you ran into with that, and maybe some of the opportunities that you see to continue to build and kind of enhance that platform?
Nice. Problems with data, like I think that was the main problem. Like we have a bunch of data here and Trustful has a bunch of data here. How to connect those data? How to make it powerful? What kind of outcomes do we want? I think this is the main problem nowadays regarding this kind of stuff. Because, for example, if you think Arbiter has all the data regarding grants program, Balancer has all the data regarding grants program, how to connect all of them, how Trustful can get all of them, how KarmaGet can get all of them, and we can connect those data and make create powerful outcomes. I think this is the main problem that we face. Speaking about adoption, I can see also mainly grants reviewers, people working on DAOs in this part of grants. I can see this is a new stuff that I have to deal with. Maybe I can see a huge work being done in this field of explaining to them that it will make their work easier. Okay, cartography syndicate, karma gap, choice will make your work easier. You need to put your grants program here, analyze those data, and you make it easier, because you can see, like, if you don't have a good reputation, if your grants program doesn't have a good reputation on fair rounds, so let's analyze why not, why this is not being fair. So the same problem we have to connect data, we need to figure out how to do it, deliver those kind of data in a nice way, in an easy way for those grants reviewer, for grants applicants, so they will see that their job would be easier. So we are doing basically their hard job here, getting those data, connecting all of them to deliver to the community to say, okay, now your work is easier. So I think that's the main stuff we should do. Keep
Nice.
going, basically.
What does that look like for you, Mahesh, in terms of like the technical hurdles you've run into along the way, and really, what are the opportunities you see that way with Karma?
I agree with a lot of what Dani was saying. Data is like one of the biggest challenges. It's a relatively younger ecosystem grants wise. It's not been there for like decades, right? So there's no like clear structured data around it. So every time I like go look at something, or like, okay, everyone is using different formats. Like end of the day, it's all the same data, but like just getting all of them in the right place. But that is with like any, even in the web 2 world, that would be the same thing, right? Like there, everyone have disparate systems, like getting all the data and standardizing it, that's one challenge. But the other things which we have run into is like we have this goal of putting it all on chain. And as much as there are like infrastructure companies like for like building on-chain applications, we still have some ways to go. For us, like initially when we started Gap, we were like, oh, let's just put all of this data on chain. And then we're like, the gas costs even on L2s were like very high. I was like, oh man, like what do we do now? So like write to IPFS, store the IPFS hash on the chain. So we did this whole dance around this, and then thanks to once Ethereum had the 4844, the blob, which helped all the L2s, so the costs are now like so much more reasonable. So we're like, you know what, let's just put forget IPFS, forget everything, we'll just put everything on chain now. So we started putting everything on chain. I was like, this is great, it's working. And then I was talking to one of the trustful engineers, and he's like, oh, I want to access this data on the smart contract directly. I was like, oh man, like you need to do all this parsing, and that's going to cost like a lot of gas. I'm like, okay, so now we were like brainstorming and trying to figure out like what's an efficient way to store it and so it's easy to access. I'm like, okay, we're building all this. Why doesn't this exist? Like, as blockchain applications are like evolving and moving beyond just DeFi applications, and like there's a lot of other things, I'm like, this is like a piece of infrastructure like someone should build, or like we'll do something and then we'll probably open source it and others can adopt it. So data on chain, and there are other lot of data related solutions. But if you want to put it on a regular like a L2, like a optimism arbitrum and things, and like kind of access it and be efficient around it, I think there's a lot of challenges still there. We're working through those, but so I think that's like the, I would say, is the biggest technical challenge, at least like we are dealing with right now.
You want to chime in on that, Dani?
Yeah, just a quick comment. It's funny because, not funny, it's tragic. Like, first problem, gas costs. Okay, so let's move to a layer 2. Yeah, but I want this in another layer 2. Oh, another problem, cross chain. So we're dealing with many problems. We are dealing with a new ecosystem. So, and I think we have a lot of work to do also in on having a portable reputation. So I can have my reputation on Arbitrum and take this reputation to Optimism or to another chain, to mainnet. So yeah, we're going to face a lot of problems.
That is really a really good point, because today, like for example, Gap is deployed on multiple chains, because like all the chains, they want to use Gap on their chain. So we're like, yeah, we'll make it multi-protocol, right? But then as a grantee, you want your reputation in one place. Now, like how do you how do you do that? Like you can't pick a chain. For a type of application like you are building, then you are like we are building, like it has to be like multi-chain, right? So now, like, how can you do like cross messaging? That system hasn't matured. So now we are doing this with like keeping replicas of the data across different chains, like doing it optimistically. uh, we're putting all these band-aid solutions, because we don't have the resources to go solve that problem. Like hopefully at some point, like if no one does, like we have to. But that is an excellent point. Like there are a lot of applications which have to be cross chain. Like how do you make it happen? Even for example, like allo protocol, right? Allo protocol is
Mhm.
deployed on like so many chains, and
Mhm.
um, you can aggregate all of the data off chain, but I don't think like when there is the cross chain communication even in allo. Well, maybe it's not required, I don't know, but yeah, it's the same for many applications.
Thinking of like perspective of a builder, for example. Think that I'm a builder. Imagine that I'm a builder on Optimism, and now I want to build on Arbitrum, but I'm really, really very new on Arbitrum. So I will need to build a reputation from zero on Arbitrum. But I'm already a builder on Optimism. How can I say, hey, Arbitrum, look that this kind of on-chain data here. This is my on-chain reputation. I'm a good builder. You can trust my address. So here goes everything I did on Optimism. This is my address. You need to trust my address. You can fund my address, and I will build on Arbitrum. So will also this cross organization, cross chain stuff will also mitigate political stuff. Like when you join a new DAO, when you join your ecosystem, and think, oh my god, let's go. I need to make friends here. I need to create contacts here. I need to build again and again and again here to prove that I'm good enough. Um, but I can just bring my reputation if possible. It could be good.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from you both is the challenge is building on chain and the opportunity is building on chain, right? Like to your comment earlier, Mahesh, around even in Web2 systems, right? I mean, the big difference is now that all of this can be on chain, you have, the ability for these systems to build on top of each other and it all to be done in kind of like an open, open source way, right? Which isn't always the approach in Web2, but that creates a lot of challenges around compatibility, maybe is the best way to put it, and how these different chains and the data on them and all those types of things can ultimately reconcile. One question I have for both of you is, and I'm assuming the answer is like an emphatic yes here, but do you worry about the design decisions you're making today and those creating technical debt for you tomorrow, right? In terms of like how these systems are being built, Mahesh, you mentioned, so you kind of like hinted at some trade-offs that you have to make, some band-aids that you have to put in place today. How are you thinking about that problem, right? Because ultimately you want to get to a place that you don't have technical debt that you're working down. I think a lot of that exists in Web3, but certainly Web2, right? But how do you think through those things in terms of like, am I making the right decision today that won't make my life tomorrow much harder, right?
That's a really good question, and that is the one of the highest priority, like top of our mind when we are designing these systems. I'm fairly confident these problems will be solved. So the way we are architecting our system is like, how do we build these abstractions in a way that we can like swap out these things when the right solution comes along, right? The problem like with having all this data on chain is if we have to like re-architect, like if it was a database like a regular web 2 day, like a Postgres database or something, like okay, like change the schemas, change the models and port, like just copy over the data and like you're good. But in on chain you're like, well, are you gonna like rewrite the whole thing to the chain again? Like what's how much cost is it going to be, right? So there are some of those challenges. So we are trying to like make it as generic. The If you think of like layers of like a software architecture, like if you're building it in layers, this you have to build these simple components and then you put together and then build complex systems. So we are making sure that these simple building blocks which we're building is like, it's very very generic and simple and easily swapped out. um but at the same time it does make me nervous sometimes, like if a really amazing solution comes along. At this point it's we are only a year into the system, we can bite the bullet and like rip out the whole system and do it again. But in a year or two, if we are in the same band-aid situation, that will be like worrisome, I would say.
Before I kind of ask Dani the same question, maybe when you look at the roadmap, for EVM and just what would need to be enabled to kind of like allow you to take the next step and remove some of those band-aids and architect and kind of like a preferred way. Is there specific examples you can give in terms of if certain features or functionality could be unlocked within the next 6 to 12 months? Like, what would your wish list look like that way, and what would that enable for you?
Yeah, so two things come to mind. One is, let's say, just if we just break it up into like a front end user experience and a back end, like a like a builders who are building all this and managing this data wrangling and doing this. On the back end, if there is a very nice cross chain communication, right? Like Optimism speaks to Arbitrum, talks to ZK Sync, right? Like if such system exists, then we don't have to have these multiple replica copies across these chains. Like that'll just clean up our system like so much. Like just as an engineer, I would be like so thrilled like if we can make that happen. I know there are solutions being worked on. I don't know if it is production ready yet. So that's one on the back end. And on the front end, I think it's mostly a solved problem with the account abstraction and things. We want to get to a place where today, if you go into Gap, you have to connect your wallet, and you're like, for every transaction, you're paying gas, you're switching to the right network. We want to abstract away all of those and make it a Web2 experience. That I think we are there. Like Privy and Capsule, there are all these wallets which can provide you this. Like the Coinbase has this solution. I think that is almost solved, but if once the like for me, like what I'm really looking forward to is on the back end, like cross-chain communication. That will solve so many of our.
Interesting. Who are the players in the space that are working on that today, right? Like, that you know of?
Socket socket protocol, I think that's one
Mhm.
I keep seeing on Twitter. I haven't sat down and like actually um, looked at their solution or if it'll solve our problem. That's
Mhm.
one which comes to mind. There are a few other, I'm blanking on the names. There are like a couple of cross-chain messaging systems. I just don't know how production ready they are.
So, Dani, over to you. The same question, right? Tech debt. How much does it scare you? How are you designing around that? To make sure that the decisions that you make today don't bite you tomorrow, right? And then from a roadmap perspective of EVM and all of the systems that kind of support the work that you're doing, what's your wish list look like that way in terms of if only this type of functionality could be unlocked, it would really help the types of things that you're building.
That's a really great question. My biggest worry right now is to build a product. What do I mean? Like, I don't want to build a product that says, I'm working on resource allocation, I'm working on social graph. I want to build a protocol. I'm worried about the protocol. What this protocol does. This protocol has badges, a scorer, and an issuer. So that's the reputation in this aggregator. So all I want right now is to build this aggregator. Oh, but how this community is going to use that, I don't know. They can choose. Let the community build the product. Let the community build that. I don't want to choose the best goal of this protocol right now because I don't want to close and make it niche. Because as far as I know, like most of the reputation protocols and reputation products that we have today are very niche. So social graphs or I don't know, only focus on identity or engagement. So I want to build an aggregator in the DAO and the communities can use whatever they want to do with that. I try to build them at baby steps, okay, now badges to aggregate reputation to grants program. Now I score 1 to 5 because 1 to 5 is the review mode. Now issuer, what should be the next step here? So now I think the next step should be connect the reputation of a member to the reputation of a grant program. Okay, next step, how can we do like across a chain, across organization stuff? So one step at a time, listen to the community, listen to what do they want. So and then I'm building at a baby steps. So basically is that.
Totally.
So philosophically, there are like we have gone the other way from what Dani was saying. I'm sure there's like there are different ways to approach these problems, right? Philosophically, our approach is we didn't want to just build the protocol. For example, Gap, right? Like we didn't want to just build the protocol and like, hey guys, like just use it the way you want it. We took another approach where we not only want to build the protocol, but we want to build the application on top of it. Like, let's dog food our own protocol and then build this application for a specific problem, which is what, like when you go on Gap website, like that's the application, underlying is the protocol. And then now we're seeing this ecosystem of like other people integrating, trying to do other things with the protocol. So it's interesting. Like, we started with a very opinionated way of like, yes, this protocol like does this, like, and this is how we are using it, and we want to really solve our own protocol, and then we'll evolve the protocol to other one. It's just like a philosophical difference. I know like both types have worked. People take different approaches. It's just like our approach.
Interesting. Yeah, it's cool to see the difference there for sure. That's a good segue actually into the next question. Walk us through Gap, right? Like, if I'm a builder and I'm being asked by a grant program, we're seeing more and more of that at Gitcoin. We want you to create a Gap profile. We want you to track your milestones. Maybe walk us through exactly what that functionality looks like today, what that builder journey, looks like, and what you see that roadmap hopefully looking like over, say, the next 6 months.
Yeah, it's so nice to see a lot of grant programs starting to use Gap and asking grantees to like use Gap like to create their profile. The way I think about Gap from a grantee point of view is it's their on-chain resume. Like, there's a project on-chain resume, right? So what is the resume used for? Like, for a person, like the resume is to, you can go get a job, you can like get funding, those things. For project, it's two things. One is you can apply for funding, like you build up your reputation, you have your resume which can be used, which the grant program operators can see all your work, and then you are accepted into a round, or like you get funding. And the second thing is distribution. So all of this data is on chain. We have a lot of other integrators like pulling all these project information, showing on their websites all these projects. On our website you can see all these projects. So any project to succeed, you need funding and you need distribution. So we want to like provide both of those. We want to enable those two things, funding and distribution. And the way we think of like we do that is today, the just to go into the weeds a little bit of how Gap works, is you set up your project profile, and then if you are like participated in a Gitcoin round, we would automatically sync that Gitcoin data into our system. You don't even have to do anything, so it automatically gets ported over. So you simply log in and you see like, okay, I was part of GG20 round or GG21 round, and then you can just go create milestones of what you plan to accomplish with the funding you have received.
Dani, I'd turn it over to you for the same question, right? Walk us through Trustful, like what it is today, what the current working model looks like, maybe the example with the cartographers and what we built for the registry, and then just kind of your vision and the roadmap for that here in the next 6 months.
Trustful is an aggregation aggregator. I like to call Trustful attestation layer. We work using Ethereum attestation service, EAS, very, very nice. So we work issuing badges, reputation badges to now grants program to cartographers. We have a live version working on the Village, Georgia also. So if you had a good conversation at the Village, Georgia, I can issue a badge for you saying, oh, I had a good conversation with Sov, or Mahesh changed my mind. So you can aggregate those kind of badges, interactive badges, that proves that we interacted with quality at an event. And very nice to aggregate reputation to grants program. So me as a grantee for example, Arbitrum grants, I can attestate that Arbitrum grants is a nice grant program. So I can select a smooth application badge or fair rounds or great reviewer and choose from 1 to 5. So, and then we get average score for each grants program. So each grantee can go there and attestate reputation and create a reputation for any grants program. So if you are grantee of the Optimism, for example, grants program, you can go there and say, okay, I like the application was smooth and the score is 5. That's the point I'm giving to optimism grants because they're nice. And then you can compare grants program. So why we can bring questions now. We can bring up questions. Why, for example, Optimism Grants has a higher score on its Smooth application? Why Arbitrum Grants has a higher score on great reviewers? And then Grants program can enhance that. And all those data, all this kind of data is completely on chain. Next to 6 month incentives, because if I am a grantee, why do I want to create a reputation for this grant program? I'm not going to do that, So work on incentives. Of course, we're going to have members that wants to do that, wants to help to improve this ecosystem. But for sure, we need to work on incentives to make grantees, to create to attestate, to give a reputation to grant program. ZK or other privacy too, I think would be very, very important. Because me, as a grantee, I want to attestate a reputation for a grants program, but I don't want them to see that I give them like a score of 1 on a Smooth application, because I want to apply again in the future. So next to 6 months, completely focused on incentives and privacy tools.
Awesome. No, it's awesome. So the next kind of topic I want to move on to is kind of like future trends and predictions, right? And maybe just talk a little bit about, we've been very much keeping this conversation around kind of like reputation and grants, but I think it would also be good to dive into kind of like both of your thoughts on the concept of reputation and like what other aspects of kind of like the greater crypto ecosystem is this applicable to, right? I mean, the first one that comes to mind for me is like governance, right? And so maybe Mahesh, like I'll start with you. Like if you had to give me like a top 1 or 2, places where you think reputation could have a huge impact outside of grants, like what would those be and why?
Because I've worked on the governance tooling and the governance product for a couple of years now, I think that is ripe for this kind of change now. I think it was still kind of immature. Now it's maturing. The governance ecosystem is that is right off the bat. Like yes, like you can do token holder, like voting power based on like the tokens you hold or based on like the reputation, right? So I think at least people are like starting to think about it to actually use it in the real world. So governance right off the bat is one. And we haven't touched too much into the Sybil. There's a lot of use cases, right? Like what for quadratic funding or like for other places where like you kind of need a proof of personhood. The way people have solved today, like everyone is taking different approaches, but like purely based on the reputation, where you're like actually looking at the real things you have done, like someone actually received a grant and actually built something, like you have accrued reputation. Can you like use that data in like something else, like when you are like airdropping tokens to someone for your new project, like can you use that instead of like things which you can easily game, like some GitHub commits or like on-chain transactions, right? So that's how I see this evolving, as you get like real high quality data that acts as a reputation for like doing a lot of other things.
The Vitalik quote, right? The scarcest thing is legitimacy, something like that, being able to prove that, right? What are your thoughts there, Dani? If you had to give me kind of a top 1 or 2 places that this could be useful in other spots.
Yeah, same. I love this airdrop use case. I love the governance use case, voting power. So for example, you can have like bicameral DAO. So one treasure, people can vote by using reputation. In another treasure, people can vote using tokens. It also can mitigate plutocracy. I love this use case as well. So I don't have much voting power, but I have a nice reputation in that DAO. So I can have a multiplier on my voting power. So I have 2,000 tokens, but I have 15 reputation scores, so it can be a multiplier, and my voting power can increase in that DAO to reward good members, to reward good contributors. Also, quadratic funding using reputation and a matching pool. I would love to see this use case. Yeah, many, many, many of them. Particularly, very, very happy. I'll be very, very happy to see one DAO using voting power reputation based Monday. Yeah, I can envision that in the future. I can see also grants programs with reputation. So, okay, this grant program never replied me before. So I will never apply to that again. So, or this grant program is really cool, it's really nice. And you cannot state that this grant program is really generating impact in the ecosystem, because this grant program is rewarding the builders, and we can have like favorite chains to builders, favorite chains to embrace developers because they have a high reputation. So yeah, when you talk about reputation, it's really broad, because it's a concept that can embrace many use cases, many protocols and apps. Yeah, I think that's it. Reputation means consider again in Latin, is to put that in. Rethink, consider again. So I'd love to see we considering new members, even though they don't have like a high voting power or a high politician skills in this ecosystem.
Interesting. One question I want to ask both of you is AI LLMs, and how you see that being something to design around. What are the opportunities that those present, as well as the challenges, right? When I think about kind of like systems being built around reputation, many of these are very much based on, having individuals that would pass a Turing test that can attest their experiences that they've had, right? Or the work that they've done. And as we get to a place now that machines are passing that daily, I was playing around this morning with, the newest model of ChatGPT. I've been a big Claude fan for a long time now, but as I played around with, I think it's called 4i, it's incredible, just the progress that's been made in the last 9 months around these systems. And you think about what the next 9 months are going to look like. I mean, it's wild, right? And so, I'm sure that's something both of you are thinking about, maybe starting with you, Mahesh, like AI LLMs, like how do you see that impacting the work you're doing at Karma, and just kind of like, broader in the space just around reputation, and what are the opportunities and like the risks that we have around that?
This is like on top of my mind, and yeah, I was looking yesterday on the 401, the new models and the things they can do, and I cannot even imagine in the next year how good these models are going to be. We are already starting to see some of these. I see the both the opportunity and the challenge, right? So when I talk to program operators, they are receiving a lot of AI generated applications.
Oh yeah.
So how do you determine like who is actually like legit and who is like what is going on there, right? So that's one thing which we are really trying to solve with like these gap profile. Like if someone is actually verified and they got funding and they actually executed, that record is on chain, so you automatically kind of have some credibility, right? So you can use that. In our system, like when people create these milestones and like post updates on those milestones, sometimes like you can see that it's been are they using LLM just so they're to make it more concise and make it more elaborate, or are they like just randomly generating it, right? We are going to like we're starting to see it here and there, but it's gonna get worse. So we are already like putting other things around it, like show us the output, what is the impact, like how can we track your impact, right? Like some things cannot be faked, so we are doing some of those. So um yeah, from our point of view, like both grant program managers and the grantees, it can be used for both. And the thing I'm really excited about is, for example, there is like a Gitcoin round. Let's say they have 100 projects they funded. 100 projects had on average 3 milestones. There's 300 milestones. Program managers don't have the time to like evaluate these 300 milestones. So now we just started integrating some of these LLM tools to like auto evaluate this. Like, can you go look at the proof and then figure this out? So that is like really an exciting part of some of these things. So there is like some challenges, but a lot of these opportunities which to take this democratic funding allocation, there are so many things you need to solve. LLMs will play such a big role. Like the thing which we are really starting with, I'm excited about this, is automatic milestone evaluation. Like go look at the proof, figure it out, and like come back and tell me if they actually did it. Like applies for digital
Interesting.
goods, but yeah, there's so many other ideas I have, but like yeah, like this is something I'm excited about.
What about you, Dani? What do you see that way?
That's nice. Mahesh mentioned this milestone. completion form of check with AI. We can do even like just a comment. I never thought about AI and reputation before. I have a lot of things to think. So this is a new topic in my head. But I was thinking of pre-application. So you can apply to a grant, and AI can check your application and say, oh, this application doesn't have nothing common with the DAO you're applying. So this application is about gaming. We are not accepting gaming applications right now. So, and you can give the grants reviewers less context. So they will only evaluate, they will only accept applications that are available to that community or that DAO. So I think this is very, very nice. This idea I brought from AI Delegate, Blockful is building AI Delegate also. You give an AI a bias, you give an AI the DAO constitution, and this AI is going to vote to proposals and save the DAO. So if an attack is happening, this AI will read the DAO constitution and say, no, this is a malicious proposal. So it also can happen with grants program. So AI can read all the applications and select the best ones or the ones that has something in common with that community, with that DAO, with that grants program. So it's a way to give grants reviewer less context and make builders apply to the right grants program as well.
Totally. Yeah, this is something we started, working on in Gitcoin with Checker, and we've built just a basic kind of MVP of that tool, and it's been really cool to see, especially for, programs that are operating at scale. It makes it much easier for them to do at least a first pass and kind of have like a partner, that is a reviewer. And when we built that, we were using one of the earlier ChatGPT, OpenAI kind of AI models, right? And so we had even talked about the ability to build these tools in such a way that you could plug in multiple APIs, right, or multiple different LLMs where you could have Claude as a reviewer, OpenAI as a reviewer, a Llama as a reviewer, because each of those are going to have their own perspectives and way of kind of thinking through things. And, ultimately, to the point we've kind of like intimated about here around almost like agents, right, where these agents are just interfacing with, each other. I think that there's ways that, in the not too distant future, you would be able to build almost an totally AI LLM grant council. And so for many grant programs in the space today, they have a single grant manager, or they have, a fairly small team that's handling kind of operations of grants. And so if there was some way that, that one grant manager, grant reviewer could be empowered by a grant council, of 3 or 4 members that are all agents with their own perspectives and kind of like data, associated to them, I think that could be, interesting. So that's definitely, a place that I'm kind of seeing things go. So we're coming up on time. This has been like a really interesting space. It's apparent from the conversation here that we are just getting started on the reputation side of things. As we look to build things on chain, there's a lot of opportunity around that, but obviously some pretty, big design considerations to make sure that the decisions that you're making today and how you're implementing these systems, don't come back to bite us tomorrow, and there's lots of opportunities in, how these systems can be interoperable, play with one another, learn from one another, and then maybe be, fueled, right, by AI, LLM, and some of these other innovations that are happening, just across technology in general. So I thank you both for the time. It's been great to talk with you both, and looking forward to seeing the reception from this episode.
Yeah, excited. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me. Very glad to be here talking. Speaking about reputation, my favorite topic so far. Yeah, thanks. Let's do it. We still need to know what reputation means. So
Thank you both.